Welcome, everyone. We're having a conversation today on endpoint security and how we can put effective measures in place to prevent and, if necessary, recover from a malicious attack. My name is Jeff Hunter, and I am the field CTO here at NinjaOne. And today I am joined by my colleague from SentinelOne.
Absolutely. And I'm Dwight Philpotts, Senior Sales Engineer with SentinelOne.
Thank you very much for being here today, Dwight. We are very excited to showcase the integration. But delivering effective security can take a multitude of forms, and it involves many layers of protection, and this can be across the width of your organization, and it can be vertically through your technology stack, and having as many layers of protection in place as possible to prevent a potential compromise. And this can take a multitude of forms. This could be comprehensive backups. This could be endpoint hardening. It could be effective patch management for both the operating system as well as third-party applications. It could involve user training. It could involve vulnerability auditing and scanning. It could be network-based security. And of course, it could be antivirus and EDR tools like SentinelOne. All of these tools and more can be important methods to help maintain a proactive security posture. And so today we'll be looking at how NinjaOne can ensure endpoints are backed up in the event of a compromise, how we can put layers of security in place on our endpoints to protect, and how the combination of the SentinelOne integration with Ninja's other tool sets can help ensure strong protection across your fleet. Now you can see here, delivering on the fundamentals of device security. We want to think not just in terms of AV and EDR, although that's always going to be a critical and important piece of any security setup. We have to think beyond that. I always use the metaphor of security is like pouring water on concrete. It's going to find every crack and crevice. A malicious attacker is, and you should too. With that, I am going to go ahead and dispense with the PowerPoint, and we're going to go ahead and actually dive into the actual platform. And hopefully everybody can see my screen here. I'll give it a second to load in. And now we're going to go ahead and actually first take a look at NinjaOne Backup and how we can ensure that if there is some form of compromise, that we have protection in place. We never want to have to actually use the backups, but we do have to have them. NinjaOne makes it very easy to deploy backup through our endpoint management. You can see NinjaOne Backup is the first item in the top right here. This is where we would enable it. Obviously, it's already enabled in this organization. And we offer the ability to back up both to extremely reliable AWS S3 storage that's licensed through Ninja. And so that would give you cloud protection, but you also can store your backups locally as well without using any cloud storage. Now, if you would like to implement something like a 3-2-1 principle of backup and have backups both stored locally as well as in the AWS cloud, we can easily facilitate that using a hybrid backup, which would first back up to your local file share. This is anything with an IP address and a file share that supports SMB 2.0 or greater. So that gives you plenty of flexibility on the local storage options. And then if you're using that hybrid option, we'll upsync from that local storage to the AWS cloud. Now, this particular instance that I am in is a Canadian instance, which is why the bucket is Canada. But if you're located in the US, you have 3 different options. That might be AWS East in Northern Virginia, it might be in Ohio, or it might be in Oregon. And then, of course, if you're overseas in either APAC, Australia and New Zealand, or that region, or if you are in EMEA, we also have dedicated buckets for each of those regions as well. Now, for the features that we offer with backup, there are 2 primary types of backup that NinjaOne offers. For both Windows and macOS devices, we offer file and folder backup. So individual documents or folders, certain file extensions that you want to make sure are captured, we can accomplish that on both macOS and Windows. And then for image backup, that is going to be Windows only, as the concept of a image backup in macOS or the Apple ecosystem doesn't really exist. Now, once we set that up, we can then go into organizations on the left-hand side here, and I can go into the one of our organizations here. I will select Augustana University. See some questions here about are backups encrypted? Yes, backups are encrypted both in transit and at rest. We'll show how you can generate the encryption key in Ninja on demand. So now that we're in the organization settings, we can go ahead and go to the left-hand side where we can control our backup options. Do we want to deploy to all devices in this organization? Do we want to perhaps select, two in particular that we want to back up, which is in fact the route that we're taking right here. So these 2 devices in this organization would be backed up, but we can control some of the settings first. One of those might be the bandwidth settings. If we're uploading to the cloud, we may not want our backups to choke the internet and prevent our regular operation from occurring. And so we can set a max of what each device can utilize in terms of cloud upload. Now, during work hours, we might significantly restrict this. And then after work hours, we can raise the throttle a little bit and have the backups take up more of the bandwidth, since theoretically there wouldn't be anybody in the office to worry about maintaining a more robust internet connection for them. Now, what is a work day? What is a work hour? That's entirely up to you. You can configure that. And even though right here we're setting something on the as a default for all devices, this is something that you can modify on a per device level. So if you wanted to prioritize certain network traffic for backup for some devices over others, you do have that flexibility. So a question about if this is being recorded. Yes, this is being recorded, and the recording will be sent out if you are attending, because you did have to register. We can also set network storage. Like I said, anything that has an IP address and supports SMB 2.0 or greater. If the NAS or file share does require credentials, you will have to input those, and you can actually test to confirm that the device in question has an active and available connection to that file share. Again, this is something that can be changed on a per location basis. So if you have a different physical NAS box at each distinct physical location, you can go ahead and have all devices within this location back up to that specific file share, whatever it may be. And of course, this can also be modified on the per device level too. So if you want to be able to go in and say, hey, every device is going to go to its own unique file share, maybe even their own unique file share, you can absolutely make that happen. Although, of course, having something more centralized is going to make things easier to set up. Now, after we do that, we can go into policies, and then inside of our policies here, we'll see the option to set up our backup plans. And so I'll go ahead and select this Windows Workstation policy right here, and then I'll go down to backups on the left-hand side, where you'll see 2 different types of backup plans. We offer both file and folder as well as image. For the file and folder, you can see here we're backing up on a weekly schedule, but you have more than just a multiple times per week option for running backups. It could be every day. It could be on a specific day of the week, i.e. the 3rd Wednesday of the month, or it could be on a numbered day of the month, like the 15th. And finally, if you wanted to do an interval backup, something that's backing up critical files every perhaps a couple hours, every couple of minutes, we can certainly accommodate that. But in conjunction with that, I would highly recommend adding filters, perhaps file extension filters, to make this backup very targeted, so that way the backups don't grow in size too much. And so we could perhaps include only certain file extensions, maybe .pdf files or maybe .xl files. We can ensure that when we're doing those extremely quick backups, where they're running every hour, every 2 hours, that we're being very targeted to prevent the storage from becoming too much. Now, we do have some exclusions that we make by default. You can see here a list of file extensions as well as directory paths further below. Now, the good thing about this is that if you want to disable our extensions because they don't match what you want to back up, absolutely fine. Any of these can be disabled individually or all at once. And of course, if you want to blacklist other file extensions, we could not do an inclusion like I showed just a second ago, but we could do an exclusion. Now, finally, we have to determine what we actually want to back up here. So we can see that we have common folder options. This is the user profile, for example, which would be every user profile on the machine, and some other common options as well. But if we also wanted to exclude some common folders, we have that flexibility. And finally, pathing to any particular folder or excluding a certain path from being backed up. That's all something that we can easily accommodate for here. And I would also recommend this option down at the very bottom. If you are utilizing NTFS permissions in your environment, good idea to check that box so that when you do a restoration, you don't then have to manually account for the NTF permissions as part of the restore process. Now below the scheduling options, we have power options to try and keep the device online if possible, or using the run plan immediately if missed option. This will ensure that an offline device will run the backup as soon as it comes back online. Now, revisions are an incredibly important setting inside of NinjaOne Backup because this is your retention. How much of the data do you want to retain over time? And your schedule is going to play or intertwine with this very tightly. For example, if we have a daily backup occurring every day, we can see here with these options that we're going to capture 30 individual revisions or 30 different file changes. Now, assuming that the files are turning over on a regular basis and there's actually something to back up based off of the block level backup we're looking at, we'll see about 30 days worth of backups in this context. We're backing up every day. We're limiting to 30 revisions, so we have 30 backups. But we could also have these other revisions come into play as well. So right here, trimming anything older than 30 days, this is more or less the same. But if we change our schedule to then be sorry, misclicked there, a weekly backup, where we are backing up perhaps on Tuesdays and Thursdays, the calculus of this changes a little bit. We're never really going to get to 30 revisions, this top one here, because the second one here is taking precedence first. We are reaching 30 days before we're reaching 30 individual copies of the file when you're backing up twice a week. And so that would change the length of time we're going to retain to just 30 days. And finally, if we want to remove something that the end user themselves has locally deleted, if they don't want it, why should we care about it? We can certainly go ahead and remove that from the backup in order to conserve storage. However, there is a fact of life that I've just encountered over my career, which is that people will put things in the recycle bin that they should not. And then those things will mysteriously get deleted. And so the security blanket option, for lack of a better term right here, keeping a latest revision of anything that they themselves delete. This ensures that you do have that ability if somebody comes to you 2 months after the fact and says, hey, I accidentally deleted a file. Is there any chance that you happen to have it? As long as we captured it separately outside of the recycle bin prior to it being deleted, it will be available in the backup so that you can easily restore to the end user. Now, if you would like to set the table for your backups, we can run scripts both before and after the backup job. So perhaps this might flush logs, it might stop or kill a certain process that doesn't support VSS, and so we wouldn't be able to back it up while it's in its current operating state. And then after the fact, we could go ahead and again, kind of clear the table so that all the backup processes are complete. Not necessary for this, but if you have additional variables to account for as a part of your backup process, the ability to run a script both before and after that job is invaluable, in my opinion. And then finally, the backup destination at the bottom here is perhaps the most important setting that to note when you're first creating this backup plan. And the reason for that is that everything else we've seen here, we can modify after the fact. 2 months after creating this, I can go and modify what the retention is or what the schedule is or what paths we're backing up or add additional extensions to be excluded. This, what I'm highlighting right here, is the one thing you cannot change, the backup destination. So where this backup goes, and it can go to the cloud, to local storage, or to a hybrid backup, which would go first to local storage and then to the cloud. So whenever you're creating your backup plan initially, think about what option you would like to leverage, because you will have to recreate that if the incorrect selection is made. Now that's file and folder backup. I'll show image backup very briefly. Some of the settings are a little different. You'll actually notice this is a more condensed menu here, and we have no tabs at the very top. What we do have is the ability to determine how frequently we're taking a full backup. Our normal state here is taking an initial full backup and then delta backups after that. So just what's changed on the disk. And that, again, helps conserve the amount of storage that we're consuming. Now, you can go ahead and essentially dictate how often you would like to take a full backup. Our normal behavior will actually alternate between full backups and delta backups based off of a ratio of 75%. So if you would like to perhaps have the full backups take a longer amount of time and reduce the amount of storage you're using, this is a good option for that. And same ability to run a script both before and after the backup job. More options for partitions here. So we could use the system partition, which will natively identify all partitions on the device, or custom partitions if you'd like to maybe back up 2 drives, but not something like the RAID. You do have the option here to exclude removable disks, so you don't inadvertently capture somebody's USB thumb drive that perhaps has their bad music taste on it. Now, right there, that's the setup. I went through that a little bit more slowly just for the sake of the webinar, but you can see this is a very quick process. If you're using Ninja, setting up the backup should take less than 10 minutes for a single organization or entity. Now, let's take a look at how we can actually manage and restore this data. So we'll go back to the system dashboard here. We'll see there's actually a dedicated backup dashboard where we can see the local storage, cloud storage, workstations, and servers that are being backed up. Over on the right-hand side, we can see recent history, and this is modifiable. So if I want to see the last 30 days of backups, I can see we've had 45 that have been successful, 3 that have completed but have had some warning attached, and fortunately, we have had no failures. I can click on this. So if I want to view my completed jobs with warnings, I can come in here and the warning will be present in the column right here under log, and I can click on that to see what the warning is. And in this case, you can see this is essentially a low disk space warning. There's less than 20% disk space on the device itself, which could impact the backups. It hasn't impacted the backups. It's just a warning to let you know that this is something you might want to look at. Now from the usage screen, we can see everything that we're currently backing up. If I go to a particular device, let's say this one right here at the very top, I can go ahead and then manage all that data. You can see we have our 2 different plans, 1 file and folder and 1 image. I'll look at file and folder first. You can see I'm just browsing my user profiles here. What do I want? We'll go into the Ninja folder, into the desktop, and maybe here's a critical file that I need. And I can check the box to it, delete it, restore it, download it. Download would download to my machine that I am on currently. I'd rather restore it to the end user's machine itself. So that kind of cut out the middleman. However, what if the end user's machine is not accessible? What if it's has critical data on it that you need for the business to operate for the day, but because the machine is not operational, we can't get to it? Well, if we go into the backup, we can then say, let's restore to another location, perhaps this other device that's in the same organization. And then from here, I could find a directory, perhaps the user's directory here. I can determine how I want to handle any potential file name conflicts, and then I can determine what revision I want. Right here, I only have the 1, but in theory, if you have more longer revision trimming in place, you will have many more revisions to choose from for the restoration process. Now I'll go ahead and I'll restore here. There we go. That's going to kick off. That's a pretty small file. That should take pretty quick. I did want to point out that with the file and folder backups, you do get the ability to grant a self-service option. This is actually the exact same environment that I've been in so far, but I'm logged in as a different type of user, an end user. And an end user has way more limited capabilities than a technician would. In my view of the dashboard or the Ninja console, you saw dashboards, policies, reports, all the important things you care about. An end user's view that we see here is much more limited. And so if I go to the right-hand side and look at the backup manager, I can then start to drill down into whatever I need to get from this machine. There is that critical file right here that we mentioned. And then when I click the option there, you'll notice that 2 options disappear. You can't delete. None of the end users can delete anything. And you also cannot initiate a network restore. Obviously, if somebody had a larger file, let's say a terabyte file, and they go, all right, hit restore once, hit restore twice, hit restore 3 times, that's going to start to cause problems. So for that reason, we explicitly do not give them the ability to initiate that network restore. They can only download on the machine that they're currently logged into this portal with. And there we can see that our file and folder restore is done. And so in theory, we could go ahead and operate for the day because we've taken this critical file and we've put it back onto an operational machine. We'll close out here and then we will dive into the image backup. Actually, I'll go back into that image. And then if I click into the image here, I'll see the partitions that I'm backing up. In the top right, I have my image restore manager. So I can go ahead and download this. It's a portable exe that I'll need to generate bootable media, and then also include the encryption key so that the backup will then be decrypted upon the download. I also will need my image authorization key as a part of that process. So let's go ahead and generate that right now, just so I have it handy on my clipboard. Now, if I click into one of these, you'll see that I have my various restore points. We've got a full backup at the beginning and then 2 delta backups. And if I click into one of these, because we are storing this in the cloud in some form, I can actually mount this image in the cloud. It's not bootable in the way that you would actually see the desktop, but all the files and folders on that image are now easily accessible. So in lieu of having to download the image and fully restore it just to get one measly file or folder out of it, I can just do that right here inside of the console. So once we mount it, I'll be able to see my files and folders. And if I happen to need one particular file or folder, it's just really easy to go ahead and grab it out of this backup here. And then once again, you'll see that critical file that I can then easily pull out of the image backup. So if you don't want to double up on file and folder and image backups, you can see that you have some flexibility there. But this is a nice use case, but it's not the primary purpose of an image backup. That usually is a disaster recovery scenario where you're going to have to restore the full image to a particular device. Let's say a hard drive goes bad on a particular server. We need to go ahead and make sure that we're able to restore to that device. And so I will open up my image restore manager. This is the tool we'll need to generate those bootable media and then also decrypt the image. I will pretend to read the EULA here. And then we get to this screen where I can create my bootable media. I will note here that aside from Windows 10 and Windows 11 machines, this selection right here for what pre-boot environment you want to use, there is nothing about generating this bootable media that is tied to the specific backup. So if you're just creating a USB thumb drive and you want to keep that on your keychain, it'll work as long as you're using it on a Windows 10 or a Windows Server device. You may need to have separate bootable media for Windows 11 restorations. Now, once we create that bootable media, this could be either an ISO or a USB flash drive, we are then going to insert that into our non-operational device. And when we boot from that USB, it's going to look like this, same exact thing that we see right here in a normal Windows operating system. And the idea is you then go and restore, paste your restore authorization key that we generated in the console earlier. And from there, I'm able to see my image plan. I have 3 restoration points here, and I can select which one I would want to utilize. Now, of course, I'm booted into Windows, so this is not going to let me go past this. Otherwise, this webinar would end very quickly. But we would go ahead and do this in either a VM or for a non-operational machine. Theoretically, if you had a hard drive connected in an enclosure to a device, you could go ahead and actually flash to that hard drive, which could then be inserted into the non-operational device like a server. So that's Ninja Backup. I wanted to go ahead and kind of shift gears here because, like I said, you have to have backups, but the goal is that you never want to actually use them. So let's talk about how we can take a different tact of actually trying to prevent the compromise at the point of, at the attack vector. And the endpoint is the attack vector, although of course there is some ancillary stuff around that. For example, the user, I always think the user themselves is perhaps one of the most dangerous vectors in cybersecurity. But let's talk about how we can use the full stack of the Ninja toolset to give us more layers of protection. So I'll go into this policy down here. For those of you unfamiliar with Ninja, the policy is the engine that makes Ninja go. You'll see that we already spoke about backups being a policy setting, but you'll see some other things on the left-hand side. Conditions are what we would monitor and alert on. Scheduled automations are scripts that we'll execute. And then, of course, Windows patching, third-party patching down here in the software tab. And something that will not go neglected on this call, which is the integrated antivirus and deploying integrated AV like SentinelOne. For starters, let's look at our scheduled automations. I have a device configuration / onboarding script that I think is very useful for standardizing your endpoints as they join Ninja. And so if we look at this, this is one automation, but inside of it are actually 7 different scripts that are intended to go ahead and make the endpoint either more difficult to compromise or give us some additional information in the event of a compromise so that we can better protect ourselves in the future. Now, these scripts right here, I am playing fair. I didn't code any of them, 0 coding involved. All these scripts that we see here are from the NinjaOne template library. This is an initiative that we've had for over a year at this point, maybe over 18 months, to provide more out-of-the-box content. And so the template library has expanded to include a lot of valuable device configuration actions that we'll talk about. And so these right here, this is all stock imported from the template library. It took me about 5 minutes to set all this up. And you can see what we're doing as a part of this process. Are we enabling the Windows firewall? Are we setting UAC settings? Are we disabling local administrator tools? Now, if we click into this, you'll see that we have what we call script variables here. And the script variables allow you to provide input to your script in a very linear way. And so I look at it as being able to take a very powerful, very complex script and make it easy to use and very easy to tell what you are going to do. And so in this case, for disabling local admin tools, do we want all tools or do we want to make this more granular and only block certain options like the run command, the registry editor? And so you get a lot of flexibility here without having to code anything. We might also want to disable weak TLS, disable SMB version 1, disable PowerShell 2.0, or optimize the event log so that we are capturing all the data that we care about. Now that's a device configuration action, and that's running once immediately, which means it'll run across all devices that are currently on this policy. If they're offline, we'll run it as soon as they come back online. But then also any new devices to join in the future, they're also going to have this these set of scripts run on them. Now, something else I have in place is leveraging more scripts from the template library to report on my users. Like I said, the user is an incredibly dangerous vector here. So let's report on who is a local user on all of our endpoints so that we have the ability to determine if they should be a user, should they not be a user. We can easily disable them if we need to. And then we can also find where somebody is a local administrator. Hopefully, you're keeping good track of your local admins and as few people as possible actually have that access. But first you have to know who has local admin. And this is something that'll go ahead and report to a custom field within Ninja to give us that information. We'll see how we can view this as a report and use it for search terms in just a second. Now, what else might we want to do within policies? The scripts are great, but they run once, right? They run at the time the device is onboarded. We want to have additional recurring checks throughout the life of the time while it's being managed on NinjaOne. And so here you can see we're utilizing more scripts from that template library to do something like audit UAC level. So if the UAC level is below default settings, we're going to get an alert right here. This is a script result condition, which runs a script on a recurring basis, the interval of which you can define right here. And then based off of the exit code or the text string that we see right here, we can then go ahead and create an alert. Now, once we create that alert, we can then respond to that alert. You can see automations over on the right-hand side. In this case, I'm only running the one automation, but you could run as many as you'd like. And what this does is alert on when the UAC level is below defaults. And then we can then use the script to set UAC settings to put them back in the category that they should be in. So this can be a wholly automated closed loop flow here. You can see when no longer met, we'll actually keep track of the UAC level. And so once we run this again and recognize that we're no longer in an alert status, we'll actually close the alert for you. If you create a ticket off of this using Ninja ticketing, we would also close the corresponding ticket as well. Now, what else are we doing? We are checking for brute force logins. So we're looking right here to see if anybody has tried to log in more than 8 times in the course of a minute. That would indicate that we have a brute force situation, and we want to know about that as soon as possible. We might want to raise our severity and priority here to be as maximized as they possibly can. We might want to use the notification channels to directly notify us in Slack, notify our general operations director, send out a high priority issue. And of course, we could also create tickets over here. We could even run an automation in response to this, perhaps to disable users. And so right here, if I want to disable a particular user, I just click on it, I add in the username I'd like to disable, and we can make that happen. We can also check for inactive users. Again, this is all from the template library, so no coding at all in as a part of what we're showing here today. You can see if I look at this template library script for inactive users that I can define what's the period of time of somebody not logging in that I want to alert on. So if it's 90 days, 60 days, what determines if a user is inactive or not? And so this will notify us when we have those users who are inactive so that we can then remediate them. And then finally, you can see here a script, one of my favorites from the template library. It reports on remote access tools. So it actually goes through, it looks at the registry, it will report what remote access tools are in place. And then if there are remote access tools in place, you'll get an alert. Now, of course, you have valid remote access tools and you have invalid remote access tools. And so you can easily pass a list of good, valid remote access tools to the script so those get excluded and you won't get those false positive alerts. So those are just some examples of endpoint hardening, how we can add in layers of security to make sure that our endpoints are better protected. Now we'll talk in a second about SentinelOne and setting up the actual integration, but I did have a couple extra layers of security to ensure that SentinelOne, once activated, is good to go. For starters, there is an S1 helper service that runs on the device to make sure that the actual S1 process and service that are doing the protection are always active. So that should take care of ensuring that you're protected by S1. But again, the concept of having additional layers here means that we always want to back ourselves up. And so we can monitor that service so that if it ever does go down, it can easily be automatically started via an automation on the right here, or in the very least, we can be notified about this. Same for the process, the S1 helper servers. The S1 helper service should help with the process staying active, but we have that additional layer here to be notified if it is not. Same for the service, and same for the service just not being present on the device. Now, none of these should really ever be something that you actually utilize, but it's 4 very easy conditions to put in place to, again, add that additional level of notification, of alerting, of proactive response to ensure that you're always going to be protected. Now let's talk about the actual S1 integration inside of Ninja. Now we've already set ours up. You'll see in the apps exchange right here, just go to add apps and you'll see SentinelOne in here as an application to be enabled. And once we enable it, it'll look something like this. So right here, we can see our settings. We need to enter our console, our API token, and then we can see the synchronization status is good here. If we want a quick link to our dashboard, we have it very easily. There may be some mapping that's required to do because we do need to take the Ninja organizations and then translate that into SentinelOne sites so that there's that one-to-one mapping. And so we can go ahead and do our mapping right here. Now at that point, we can go ahead and deploy SentinelOne. And so we will go back into policies. And if we go into policies, we'll see that antivirus tab on the left-hand side where we have SentinelOne selected. And so SentinelOne will then be able to go ahead and it'll be deployed to all of our endpoints. And so if SentinelOne is not on any device that's on this policy, it will be deployed. You'll see here some options if the installation is blocked by another existing AV. How do you want to handle that? And then if the installation does fail, do you want to automatically reattempt? And on what interval do you want to reattempt that installation? So now we've set up the integration, and that's going to give us monitoring and alerting. Actually, if we go back into our policies here, under activities, we could go ahead and actually have notifications sent based off any of these actions with SentinelOne. So let's say that a threat has been detected. Right down here, we can make sure that this is going into Ninja ticketing or another integrated PSA so that we're notified that the threat is detected. And we'll have easy, quick links from Ninja into the S1 console so that you can remediate inside of SentinelOne. And speaking of which, I think now is a good time to go ahead and hand it over to Dwight, who is going to do a great demonstration of a live ransomware attack and how S1 can help prevent and remediate that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. So yes, so we spoke about the integration and how the integration can help with SentinelOne, but why? Why would you want to make sure SentinelOne is there, is running? So now I'm going to show you a demo of some of the capabilities of SentinelOne and why you want to make sure SentinelOne is running and have that extra layer of detection and notification capabilities. So as Jeff mentioned, I am going to run a live ransomware attack. Up here, we have a victim machine. It's a normal user, right? They're going to get a phishing attempt, and as much as you tell them not to do it, they're still going to open that phishing email. Down here, we have an attacker that sent out a lot of different weaponized payloads, and they're just waiting for a callback from one of them. And then over here, we have the SentinelOne console. I'm going to show you what this attack looks like in the SentinelOne console and show you some of our differentiators in the market. All right, so let's get this kicked off. So our user, as I mentioned, they're still going to go ahead and open this attachment. And even after they open, Microsoft is going to try to save us saying, are you sure you want to enable editing? And the user is going to say, of course, I have to look at this document. And as soon as they do it, you can see down here, our attacker got the interpreter session that they was waiting for. And you can see that SentinelOne did detect this as a threat. And then over here, you can see how fast that threat makes it up to the SentinelOne console. So these two machines are running locally on my laptop, whereas the SentinelOne console is running in the cloud. Also, just to point out, SentinelOne has two different protection levels. One is detect and the other is protect. Detect is only going to alert you on what's happening, and we're not going to do any automatic mitigation actions. Whereas protect, we're going to alert you and do automatic mitigation actions. Next question is going to be, why would I even want to use detect mode? Well, sometimes you don't want to do any automatic mitigation actions. One use case is maybe you have an incumbent AV and you're moving over to SentinelOne, and maybe you want to deploy it side by side so you get it comfortable, make sure everything is covered, you have coverage for everything before moving the incumbent AV product. That would be a good use case in which you want to use the detect mode. Right, so we're running in detect mode. That's why this was able to happen. If we were running in protect mode, as soon as I would have clicked enable editing, we would have killed and quarantined that document, and the attacker would not have even gotten that interpreter session open. Right? But that would have been a boring demo, and we want a little bit more than just that. So I'm going to run through the rest of this attack, but what I want you to definitely pay attention to are the threat indicators over here, right? Because what that is going to show is our storyline technology in action. What our storyline technology does, it automatically correlates events that are happening on the machine together into a single storyline. Where that helps, it helps us not to give you a bunch of different alerts for the same attack that's happening. What I'm doing here, I did some process migration, I'm bypassing UAC, I'm going to set some persistence mechanisms, and then I'm going to deploy ransomware. If this was another product, you probably would get 5, 6, 7 different types of alerts just for this one attack. Whereas with us, you can see over there in the threat indicators that we started off with 8, now we're up to 16, and we're going to continue to increase as I go ahead and deploy the ransomware on this machine. So our storyline technology is a pivotal part of our technology in order to, one, help you be able to keep the amount of alerts down, but two, it also helps us with our remediation capabilities. So since we are tracking everything that's happening, since we know exactly what happened as part of that malicious storyline, when it comes to remediating a machine, we know exactly what we need to undo that was done as part of that storyline. So we went ahead, deployed some ransomware on this machine. We deployed the R-Evil ransomware. So soon you'll see it pop up here and get this machine encrypted. There we go. So we've got the wonderful README file. Then now we're going to lose access to my important documents and screenshots. All right. So over here, I'm going to run through some of the information that SentinelOne provides as part of this incident. So over here, you can see the first time that you ever saw this incident in your environment, as well as the latest time. So you can see, is it something brand new or something that has popped up several times before? Also, you can see how many times on how many different endpoints in your environment. Of course, this is my demo environment, so you can see 54 times on one endpoint. But let's say if it said 10 times on 10 different endpoints, then you know you have a possible targeted or mass campaign against your environment. Then down here, this is where we give you information about the threat itself. So you can see the threat file name, which is benefits enrollment. Then down here, you can see the process user, which is the Sentinel user. And then down here, we give you the originating process as outlook.exe. When I opened the document, I opened it with word.exe. However, down here, we're showing you that originating process is outlook.exe. What we're doing here is we're using our technology to go up a little bit higher in that storyline to tell you what that initial vector of compromise was a little bit faster. Because if we would have told you word.exe, your next question to yourself would have been, okay, where did this document come from? But by telling you outlook.exe, you have a very good indication that was a possible phishing attempt. If we would have told you chrome.exe or firefox.exe, you have a good indication it's a possible drive-by download or purposeful download. So this is one of those areas where we're using our technology and automation to help you get to that initial vector of compromise just a little bit faster. All right. Then over here, this is where we're telling you how we detected this threat. So this was detected by our agent using our dynamic or our behavioral analysis. So we do have three different parts of our detection and prevention capabilities. The first is going to be cloud intelligence. So that's catching those known bad that are out there, using kill and quarantine, stopping them without using any advanced capabilities. The second is going to be our real-time static file analysis. That's where we train our AI models for static file analysis, both on malicious and non-malicious files that are in the wild, so that they can catch those those malicious files trying to masquerade as non-malicious files. And the last being the behavioral analysis that this used, in which we look at the behavior of an entire storyline instead of a single process in order to catch those more advanced attacks, zero-day attacks, fileless attacks, living off the land attacks, all the more advanced attacks of today out in the wild, right? Then right here, this is that unique storyline ID that we use in order to correlate everything together inside on a single storyline. Then down here, this is where we give you information and actions that you can do on the endpoint. So if I come here and click the endpoint name, you see I can open a remote shell to that endpoint. For Windows, this is going to be an admin PowerShell instance. Linux and Mac, this is going to be a root bash instance on those machines. Then down here, I can disconnect the machine from the network. So what this is basically going to do is shut down network connections to everything except for the SentinelOne console. So you'll still be able to work on that machine, clean up that machine without that attack getting to other machines in your environment. Then lastly, over here, at the time of detection, we take a snapshot of all this information. So if any of this information changes after, you don't have to wonder what it was when this incident came in because you know what it was. So for instance, we know that this is in detect mode. If someone changed it to protect mode afterwards, you don't have to guess at what point did they change it? Was this in detect mode or protect mode? You know exactly that this was in detect mode. Also IP addresses, right? People are always moving. Some environments have DHCP where IP addresses are always changing. You know exactly what IP address this machine had at the time of detection. Then over here, this is where we have the different threat indicators that I told you to pay attention to. So we started with 8, we ended up with 30, right? So that shows you how much we were able to correlate during this attack to this one incident. And some of the stuff that I mentioned, right? Some persistence using a service, ransomware, of course, some office program loaded in a DLL. That's how we started everything. Bypassing UAC, document behaving abnormally, execution of a Metasploit stage. You saw me using Metasploit. So you can see all the things in these threat indicators that helps you get an indication of what possibly happened during this attack. Then in this Explore tab, you can actually walk down the process tree and the storyline to see how all of these are correlated together. You can also search here if you wanted to, if you knew a process that was a part of this and you want to get further along in that story tree, you can use that. Also over here, you can always get some information about the exact process over here. So for PowerShell, you can see the command line that we ran. And lastly, let's say you wanted to use this in a report for someone else that doesn't have access to SentinelOne, you can always export this storyline and be able to include it in your report as a PNG. Right? So now we made our users sweat long enough for opening that attachment. Let's go ahead and help them out and help them by mitigating that machine. So when we come up here to mitigation actions, we can go ahead and do all these different actions. So we have kill and quarantine, which everyone has as table stakes. But where we set ourselves apart is the one-click remediation and our one-click rollback. With the remediation, this is where we're going to undo a lot of those things that were done. So persistence mechanisms will remove that. Registry changes will undo that. So that's where the remediate comes into play. The background will change it back. And then the rollback, this is where we give you back access to files you might have lost access to, in this instance with ransomware. All right. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then now we'll come over here. So now that the machine knows that it has to do some remediation, what you'll see down here, you'll see our attacker lose not access to not only one, but all three interpreter sessions that he opened, because he opened some extra ones just in case we found one. But of course, since we have that storyline feature, we're able to see all the activity that he did, including opening 3 different interpreter sessions. Up here, you can see we were able to get back access to those files we lost access to, especially our very, very important Cheeto lock screenshots, right? We need those for business purposes, of course, right? And then right here, you can even see that we were able to send that background back to what it was before. So without needing to pull a machine off, re-image a machine, you go ahead and clean a machine while it's still in place. And then we don't want you to just blindly trust us, right? We try not to be a black box. For everything that happened, you can download a CSV. So you can see everything that was killed, everything that was quarantined, everything that was remediated, as well as everything that was rolled back. So we really want to be an open book. We don't want to be something mysterious, right? Although we use technology, we still want to be an open book for you. So you know you don't have to blindly trust us, and you can openly trust us with your environment to make sure SentinelOne is able to keep your environment safe. All right. So now I'll hand it back to Jeff.
Thank you very much, Dwight. Go ahead and steal the screen back. All right, a brief sales pitch, if you would allow me. This is empirical data from Omdia that shows people switching to NinjaOne saw dramatic improvements in patch compliance, saving time on patching, reduced time on providing support, reduced ticket volumes. And then I always say that you can hear me say it all day. You're going to want to actually use the platform and play around with it to actually get the confidence and certainty that it's going to do what you want to do. Here at Ninja, we consistently have #1 rated support. We have free and unlimited training and onboarding. I was formerly a member of the sales engineering team, and any Ninja customer has full access to sales engineers for training purposes and to talk over what they want to do in their environment and what the most effective and efficient way is to accomplish that. And I imagine that you might have some questions. I saw plenty in the chat that we haven't been able to get quite yet. So if you do have questions and you want to continue the conversation, please feel free to reach out, jeff.hunter@ninjaone.com. We would love to hear from you. And with that, I will bring us to the main event, and I will invite Mr. Andrew Lee to join us for a webinar prize giveaway.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending today's webinar session. My name's Andrew. I'm the Marketing Programs Coordinator, and I'll be announcing the winner of today's webinar prize. So this person will be able to choose between either the Uni Pizza Oven, a $300 Amazon gift card, a Steam Deck, or a Jetson Bolt folding electric bike. I think it goes up to like 15 miles per hour. Don't quote me on that, but the winner of today's prize is Lindsay Fiat. Sorry if I butchered that, but everyone drop a huge congratulations in the chat. Lindsay, please keep an eye out in the following days for an email to claim your prize. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And we have a little bit of time here for questions. So we are going to peruse the chat and see if there's anything that we can answer while we're on the air. Dwight, I might tee you up for this one. It says, do you recommend monitoring the VSS snapshot age to monitor recoverability in the event of an S1 ransomware rollback?
So I wouldn't necessarily, you can if you want to, you could definitely monitor the age. But with SentinelOne, we're constantly taking snapshots. So every 4 hours by default, we're taking snapshots. So that way we're able to have a new snapshot, with the delta of 4 hours. So you don't necessarily need to do that. But if you can, as we mentioned with Jeff earlier, there's nothing wrong with having multiple layers of notification. But yes, by every 4 hours, we're taking snapshots so that you can have it. Now, of course, if something has ransomware, you wait days before you do the rollback. That's going to make it a little bit difficult to have a snapshot that you need. But yeah, a long answer for that.
No, that's good information. And one thing that we didn't demonstrate here, but just even making sure that the VSS service is enabled and not completely disabled, that would be a good additional layer you could take from the Ninja side to ensure that you do have that recoverability. That would be kind of a table stakes baseline modification.
So,
looking through some questions here. I got a question. Will you get notifications if there is not enough space for VSS? I'm assuming that's in relation to NinjaOne backup, and you can. So if we go into policies and then activities, there's a whole slew of dedicated backup notifications. I'll actually reshare my screen and show this because I'm realizing now that I think I missed that during the initial presentation. So bear with me just one moment. All right, and so if we go into policies, my screen should be coming up here just now, and then go to activities on the left-hand side, you'll see that under backup, where we earlier saw the SentinelOne activities down here for being notified if there's a threat detected or some other issue with SentinelOne, within Ninja Backup, you have that same capability. So being warned that potentially you have low VSS space or low disk space for a VSS snapshot, that would be counted under the backup job completed with warning. The backup job was successful, but there's an error message that you probably want to take a look at. Now, of course, in the event that you have no disk space on the device and the backup isn't able to actually complete, that would be a failure. And so I would recommend having both of these, the backup job completed with warning and the backup job failed. Those would be great ticket generators so that you can make sure that your backups are going to be healthy. And obviously, in the event of backup job completed with warning, you're getting more of a proactive response to address disk space issues prior to a backup not being able to successfully complete. I'll look through again. I saw a question from Gino here. Wanted to quickly chat about managed EDR. Dwight, is that something you can talk about in a minute or two? Or would you rather?
Yeah, I can quickly talk about it. So we do have our vigilance offering through NinjaOne, which is where we're able to manage your EDR alerts for you. So the vigilance team is a 24/7 by 365 MDR service, and they will their job is basically to keep your console clean. So every alert that comes in, they'll take care of that alert, whether it's a false positive or true positive. You'll see annotations on every single alert that comes in. And because they have SentinelOne, they can pretty much remediate everything in place. Now, if there's something that goes beyond maybe a compromised account or something like that, then they'll need to escalate to you and reach out to you, say, hey, we cleaned the endpoint, but you need to go ahead and reset these credentials. So they'll be able to handle 99% of the cases that happen and only need to escalate to you on rare occasions.
Thank you very much for that, Dwight. I got a question here from Rob. Can you demonstrate an incident in NinjaOne that opens up SentinelOne for remediation? And I don't think I can quite demonstrate the SentinelOne piece right now, but in the very least, I will share my screen again and show you what a detected threat or a quarantine threat looks like inside of NinjaOne. So we'll go back into our Ninja console here. And so if I go to click on the Ninja logo in the top left, that takes me back to the main Ninja dashboard right here. And the second line item from the top in this device health tile will show you threats that are active or blocked, and in our case, what's quarantined. And so if I go to devices up here and then to threats, I see active, blocked, and quarantined. And if I look at quarantined, I'm going to see that we have an ICAR test file that has been flagged by SentinelOne. Now, what can I do with this? Well, if I check the box, I have the option to then remediate the threat in SentinelOne. Now, I think this goes to a portal where my credentials aren't working, so I can't complete the process beyond this. But we saw from Dwight's demonstration that when we click this, this would take us to what he was seeing, where we could then mark it as resolved within SentinelOne. And once it's marked as resolved within SentinelOne, we'll see this threat disappear within Ninja. So sorry, I couldn't completely demonstrate the end-to-end process, but hopefully that gave a good quick view. And with that, I think we are running out of time. So I just wanted to thank everybody for attending today. Again, if you do need or have any questions, if you want to reach out, I'll put my email in the chat once again, jeff.hunter@ninjaone.com. Love to continue the conversation. As always, if you would like to join the Ninja Discord, please join the Ninja Discord. It's a great resource for all things Ninja, but also some SentinelOne stuff too. I want to thank Dwight very much for joining us today. Pleasure to have you. And I want to thank Christopher Serpico, who was in the chat answering a lot of questions. So big shout out to him as well. So thank you, everyone. Please have a pleasant rest of your day and take care.
Absolutely.